could pick all kinds of moments to begin this story. I'm choosing to begin this story at a point in time where I was a third-year naturopathic medical student, Portland, Oregon, and I was called to the office of my academic dean, Dr. Jim Sensenig. And Jim asked me to go on a TV show and represent the school. And the school was a moderated forum called Town Hall. And he asked me to go on the show. And I'm like, why me? And he looks at me and he says, because no one else is available. And I just...
What an incredible invitation.
I felt really like, wow, right guy, right place, right time. I've been chosen because no one else is available. Exactly.
Yeah, it's all in how you look at things.
So I had no idea in that simple, humble moment how it would influence the way my life would turn out right up until this moment and beyond. So I went on this TV show, and it was a moderated forum with, I think there were 70 or 90 guests all sitting around a circle, and there were a couple of cameras with shotgun microphones mounted on them, and the moderator of the show is explaining to everybody how the show's going to work. He says, if there's anything you want to say, get your hand up in the first 20 minutes, because I guarantee you the last 40 minutes of this show, everybody's going to have something they want to say. So I'm thinking to myself, well, if I'm going to represent the school, I guess I better get my hand up. So I put my hand up, kind of like get in line, right? He had not even started the show. He begins to introduce the show, sees my hand, and calls on me.
Oh my goodness.
I'm freaked out. I now have 2 cameras with shotgun microphones racing in my direction, and I totally blanked out. To this day, I have no idea what I said in that pivotal moment, but whatever it was that I said got the attention of a physician in the audience, a medical doctor who was the head of the OBGYN department at a large hospital in Portland, who became instantly interested in working with me. And for the next 3 weeks, he called the clinic and the lab where I was working, trying to get a phone conversation with me. And I kept deflecting. I was married, I had a kid at home, and I was trying to learn how to help people get their health back. And I had enough on my plate. It was hard enough. So I just kept deflecting. And finally, the lab director one day, Ed Hoffman-Smith, says, you must take this call. And I'm like, I don't want to take the call. He says, you have to take this call. This guy is annoying the heck out of me. I have work to do. Just talk to him. So I remember standing in the hallway, because in those days all the phones were attached to walls. And I remember talking to this guy on that phone. And he introduces himself to me and says he heard what I had to say on the show and would like to hire me. And I'm like, want to hire me? He says, yeah. He says, I'm a physician. I'd like to hire you as my physician's assistant. And I'm like,
Whoa.
I'm not interested. He says, hang on. I don't think you understand what I'm offering you. He says, if you come to work for me, he said, I take responsibility for anything you do wrong. He said, so you could do brain surgery if I tell you you can, and it's on me.
Whoa.
He says, you'll have more power, more authority, more ability working for me than you ever will as a naturopathic doctor. Well, I'm a stubborn sort, and I was 3 years into the 4-year program, and it put 3 years into pre-med. So, it's like, I'm not going to jump off this horse at this point. And I said that to him. I said, I started this and I'm going to finish it. No, thank you. I'm not interested in the job. And then he said, would you at least meet with me and hear my proposal? And I'm like, I really don't have the time. He says, look, let me buy you lunch and well, when I heard buy you lunch, as a student, and anytime somebody offers you free food, it's hard to say no. So I immediately
Although they
started
say there's no such thing as a free lunch.
They do say that. So, and for him, it certainly wasn't free, because my immediate response was to look out for my classmates. I said, hey, can I bring some of my classmates along? They're hungry too. So 4 of us meet this guy at a natural foods restaurant in Portland, and 2 of them eat and run. One of them sticks around. That's Rick Brinkman, who I then became a business partner with for 26 years, and who co-authored the Dealing with People You Can't Stand book with me. Rick and I stuck around, and this guy really tried to pitch the idea of being his assistant, and I kept saying no. He said, well, then let me mentor you. He says, you have a lot of potential. And I'm like, I'm not looking for a mentor. I was so, I just was like, no, whatever it was except free food. It was like, no. He says, let me mentor you. And I said, what is it you think you can teach me? He says, well, I know right off the top of the bat, there's 2 things that you aren't learning in school that you need to know. And I'm like, what's that? He says, you need to learn how to listen and you need to learn how to talk. And of course I was like, why? And he goes, well, you need to learn how to listen because most of your patients would get better if somebody would just listen to them.
Wow.
And then he said, and you need to learn how to talk because most doctors make their patients sicker by the way they talk to them. And I had what I later learned to call a blinding flash of the obvious, where I realized that I do need to learn how to listen and I do need to learn how to talk because it's hugely important to my success as a physician. So he became a mentor to me and to Rick, and he gave us books to read, sent us to seminars, and all of this added up to Rick and I feeling like we had something to share with our classmates. We put together a little workshop called The Magical Nature of Communication. We were shy about it, so I still have the original poster, which we scribbled out, and on it says about $23 because I have a thing for the number 23. And all these students wanted to take this workshop from us. You had to learn a magic trick to take it. And so the people that didn't want to learn a magic trick didn't want to take it until they heard how great it was. And then they learned a magic trick if we would just do it again. And it turned into what became my speaking career. Well, here's what's interesting about that. So now I'm traveling all over the country, speaking to audiences, and I have to introduce myself in some way. I developed an introduction in order to tell people who had never heard of my profession about my profession as a part of my profession of speaking. And the introduction went something like this. Good morning, everybody. I am a doctor. I am not an MD. I'm not a DC. I'm not a DO. I'm not a PhD. What does that leave? And then I'd wait a moment, and then I'd make this little joke. I'd say, I said this in Texas, and the guy yelled, quack. And the audience would crack up, and then I would say, but actually, I am a naturopathic physician. I went to a 4-year medical school where I learned that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that if you treat the cause of a problem, you can eliminate the problem, but if all you do is manage the symptoms, eventually they overcome and kill the patient. I learned alternatives to giving people petroleum derivatives and cutting off troublesome body parts. And if that's interesting to you, come talk to me on a break. And then I wouldn't say anything more about it, and people would line up on breaks to find out where can I find a doctor like that, because most people, as long as I can remember, have been unhappy about the medical care they've received in the conventional system, which promises a lot up front and generally doesn't deliver all that much on the back end. Mm-hmm. So that moment with Jim in his office in school turned into a speaking career where I was promoting the profession that I went to school to learn about. And now here I am, so I'm moving now to the sort of the end of this story, I suppose, because I had a long speaking career, wrote a lot of books, made a lot of audio and video programs, got to do really cool things, had amazing audiences, got to work with NASA, with astronauts. In fact, I got to be part of a mission to the space station where I got called twice from the space station by a real astronaut. And when I was a kid, the idea that I'd someday be talking to an astronaut would be unfathomable, and yet that happened. So I had all these kinds of amazing experiences, all because Jim said nobody else was available. But here's what's so amazing about this, the arc of this particular story out of that particular pivotal moment. So I retired at the age of 67. And I mean, when I retired, I set the whole thing down. I quit speaking, quit training, quit making programs. I think my last act was to make a documentary film, How Healthcare Became Sick Care, The True History of Medicine. Before I retired, that was the last thing that I did. So I have a cool movie poster in the hallway, and I can call myself a filmmaker now. And then I stopped, and I just set the whole thing down, and I sat around letting every day blend into the next, playing my guitar, sitting in my garden, loving on my wife, my cat, my chickens, and my family, and basically, finally, just being alive, being a human being instead of a human doing. And I loved it. I really loved it. And then somebody said, hey, we'd like to show your movie at this conference. Would you come and tell everybody why you made it? Da, 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 da. So it was a conference for the Naturopathic Medicine Institute at one of their vital gatherings. And, you know, and I always told you that wherever there's a pull, I want to respond. If somebody's really pulling, I want to respond. So that was a pull. They want to show my movie. How can I say no to that? So I left the comfort of my retirement. I went and showed the movie. Oh my gosh, they fell in love with the movie. People thought this movie was so awesome, and they made me this cool poster that's hanging in my hallway that gives me pleasure every time I walk by it. And then they said, and then at the end of all that, they said, we'd like you to become join with us and help us do our work. And they explained to me what the mission of the Institute was, and I resonated with that mission, which was to preserve and protect and promote the vitalistic core of the naturopathic profession. And so I went to work with them, just doing a little bit of public affairs work, helping them craft messaging, things like that. And then Jim Sensenig, who was the president and founder of the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, the guy who said... Wait, is this
the same guy
that said, guy, yeah.
That thing?
Nobody else is available. He founded this institute, showed my movie, invited me to become part of the institute, and then Jim passed away this past December in his sleep, which in my opinion is the world-class best exit you get from life on earth. Is die in your sleep. But Jim passed away, and I am now president of the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, standing in the shoes of the guy who told me no one else is available. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.